everyone. Welcome back. Hope everyone's doing well. What you're seeing is a little winter scene that I did last year, and I framed it and I have it hanging in my house. And I thought it'd be fun to do this one again. So it won't come out exactly the same. They never actually do, but I thought it'd be fun to try to reproduce it, being we have the winter upon us, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to be using some 11 by 14 Fabriano Studio Watercolor. It's 300 GSM and it's cold pressed. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the Hake as usual and we're going to wet our paper down a good 2 to 3 applications across the paper, just to get things flowing. Just to get a good amount of water across the surface of the paper. Invariably I end up picking up a little paint off of my board behind there, but that's not going to be an issue whatsoever. Going to take some raw sienna now, and we're applying that sort of randomly, leaving a little bit of white toward the center. And now a little ultramarine blue, maybe with a little bit of Payne's gray. I like to cut the ultramarine with a little Payne's gray. I think the blue is just almost too blue just by default. So I like to cut it with a little bit of, just a little bit of Payne's gray. So again, we're coming in from the sides and we're just leaving that glow in the center. Just touching up areas where the paint is cascading, the water's cascading down. Little taps just to create some little bit of cloud formation in toward the center. And now I'm going to do just a little wet into wet with some foliage here, with some bushes. And it's probably just a little too wet. I'm going to just take a little paper towel and just do a quick wipe across. I don't want this to affect anything I may do below. And I'll give it a quick dry. It's just a little too damp. Okay, and I'll resume here now. I'm going to continue with the foliage, some ultramarine blue with some cad yellow, and maybe just a little bit of Payne's gray mixed in. Using the corner of the brush, just quick licks across the paper with the corner of the brush will give you that bush type shape. And then a little bit more Payne's gray into the mix, and then a little bit of a divider here where the ground would sort of meet that foliage line. I'm going to use this to create, because we're leaving white for the snow from the paper, we're going to take the brush and we're going to create some lines where the river would follow. You'll see that in a moment. Now I'm just doing a quick pine tree here, evergreen tree, leaving some spaces and a sort of a ziggy-zaggy motion using the corner of the Hake brush, and then coming back and filling it in with the full width of the Hake brush. And we're really going for that pine tree shape. And over here we're going to put the second one just a little smaller, a little further back. And again, that's ultramarine blue, cad yellow, and a hair bit of Payne's gray. Again, just defining where the ground is meeting, I guess, the snow there. And then just coming in with some darker colors just to accent the branches. I still don't feel I'm where I want to be with pine trees. I mean, they're okay. I don't have at 100% of where I'd like to do it. I'm taking a card here and just scraping out a little bit of the trunk. You can use a fingernail. And then I just dab in over the top just to conceal some of it so it looks a little more natural. And then I'm just taking the tips of the Hake brush and just creating some brown dormant grass so that looks like it's sticking up from the snow area. Just sort of dry on the end of the brush. And then here's what I was talking about before. I'm laying out sort of the edge line of the river just very lightly so I have something to follow, because I want to keep white in the area where I want snow to show through. So I don't really have a guideline. Ordinarily, if there was grass there, I would do a sweep, and then I would have just, I would know where that divider line is. But here I'm only using the white of the paper. Now here I'm just doing a little bit of a shadow. That's probably a little too dark underneath where the tree is. Just going to wipe that back a little bit. Don't ever panic when you're doing this. If something's not right, you can wipe it off. There's a lot of ways to counteract things, as long as your paper stays wet. Take a scrap piece of paper and test out what color you're going for if you're not sure. I wanted more of a bluey type color, and I wanted it to be fairly light. So take a scrap piece of paper and just kind of test out if that's what you wanted. Just creating a little shadowy effect underneath the tree, creating a little bluish tint to the snow so that it has sort of a colder look to it. You can do a little bit of blue or a little bit of purple when you're doing snow, and it'll still look white, but it'll have a cooler appearance to it. Again, a little shadow underneath the tree. And now I'm going to start putting in some grass that would stick up sort of around the river. A few little rocks. This is going to start defining our river's edge. Things that would be higher above the ground that may not necessarily have any snow on them, that may have melted just because it's a little warmer toward that area. And again, grasses popping up. As soon as you put those grasses in there, it immediately tells the eye that there's a ground beneath it, and the color tells your brain that it's snow. Okay, so next I'm going to start applying a little bit of water where the river is, or where the little water lake type area is. Quick sweeps to leave behind white so that it looks like the water's still kind of moving, or it's icy, whichever. People look at things different ways, but we want to have some white showing through there. I want to have some white showing through there. Okay, now I'm going to put in the two trees that we had seen in the previous painting. Do these maybe a little bit differently than last time. Just make a razor's edge on the end of your hake. If this is too cumbersome for you to do, I say try using like a number 3 rigger brush. If you can't seem to get that razor edge and go up straight like I'm doing. You can also turn the brush on its side and just do very careful side strokes all the way up if you don't want to do a straight run through. Okay, so now I'm coming through with the number 3 rigger brush and just adding some branches. Just flicking in some quick little branches. Same thing for the other side. So have them sort of standing guard over the river area. Good little arch of the two trees. It just bring your focal point down the middle toward the water. Your focus, not focal point. And some little grasses popping up. You flick your number 3 rigger and you press on it. You can create almost like little, what looks like little willows. And here we have some grasses, just like I always do, to kind of border off my tree base so it just doesn't look like it's floating on the ground. Okay, so I took the brush and I took as much moisture off as I could. Really got it dry with just some light brown raw sienna color, just to lightly put some remaining leaves on the tree. Don't want a full leaf bearing tree. Just taking a little dark color here and creating a darker color underneath where the rocks are, just to make those rocks pop out a little bit more. Just re-accenting with the card, putting in a couple more rocks. And again, just some quick dabs with the bent. You take and you curl the hake so that it's rounded, and then you have the bristles sort of loosely, and you're pressing against the paper with the rolled end of the hake. Whereas here, when you're pressing against, you're going straight to the tips of the bristles to do the leaves. Very flexible, very I can't think of the word I'm seeking, but versatile. It was a very versatile brush that you can go with the corner, straight on, rolled side of the brush. There's a lot of things you can do, and I'm sure you can do that with a mop as well, and you have a point on a mop. And I think most watercolor artists are probably mop or squirrel type brush users. So coming in with the hake is really a different animal altogether. But I prefer the wide part of the brush for the things I need to do, for big sweeps and things like that. But it's nothing you can't really do with a squirrel or a mop. But the squirrel or the mop, I think they have the ability to pull you into doing more details. Here I'm just doing some darker, quick hits with the brush just to accent more of the shadowy parts of the tree. Now that that's dry, because we're going from light to dark. I've used some squirrel and pointy type brushes. I never really got caught up into the tedious little, for me the details are sort of tedious. So when I saw the big brush and the large applications, and then I read how, you have to get used to using such a big brush, I decided that's all I'm going to use. And so for 2 years of painting, that's all I used was the Hake brush. Every painting I went in, I was going to learn to use it like an appendage. That was the only thing that I was going to work with, to sort of force myself. So I almost have to go the other way. If I was to use a squirrel brush, I kind of have to learn all over again with that. So it's whatever really you've started to use. And I think most people, when they use paint brushes, they almost tend to use smaller brushes for things. Just my thoughts on the matter. So if you're just picking up a Hake brush, you've got to give it some time where it just becomes second nature, sweeping in, and there's so many different things the ways that you can use it, like I said. Just taking some browns and doing a little tapping here and there, being careful because I have the white. You can see now on this left side how it looks like there's a shadow below the evergreen tree. And then there's the little grasses popping up, and the white immediately tells you snow. It's a very, very magical thing. Just touching up a little bit of the trunk here. Just adding a little darker, shadowy leaf colors here. I don't want to overdo this, but I just want enough so that you say, hey, there's a little bit of a dormant tree. I don't want to say dead tree because they're not dead, they're dormant, right? Leaves are dead, I guess. Sounds nicer anyway. Hibernating. Quick dry here. And now we're going to go to the very controversial part, which is we're going to take some white gouache. Now, you don't have to do this. Some people I know, they use acrylic, they use titanium white. I've just applied some to the edge of the card just to highlight a little bit of the trunk here. I think for snow, it's perfectly acceptable. For other things, it might stick out like a sore thumb. If you're just trying to get white into your picture, gouache can be a little bit too striking. But for snow, it is brilliant. You know, when you go out in the snow and there's like a whiteout, it does have that effect. So I think you can get away with it here. Now, you could take a toothbrush and put it on there and flick the brush and just let it randomly hit little dots. That's one way you can do it. Ron Ranson showed that in one of his books. And that was how he created an effect of snow. I don't think he probably would have did what I'm doing here, which is to just tap with a small flat brush on the branches, white gouache. But when you do this, it kind of makes it look like there's like a ton of individual little branches. But the other option is to put some on a toothbrush, pull back on the bristles and let it just fly little dots all over. And that'll give you an interesting look in a winter scene. Maybe I'll do that I'll do another winter scene and I'll pull out the toothbrush and we'll do some spattering type effects. I don't do that enough. I see people spatter and they spatter just random blobs in like solid areas and it just creates a cool effect. It's not something I do a lot of. I think I'm always afraid of ruining the picture. So here you definitely don't want to overdo this, but you can see how it creates just little branches. And the more random that you can do this, try to keep it on the same plane, otherwise it just looks like dots all over. And if you do kind of get off track of where you're doing these, you can come back in. I'll do it in a second here, but you can come back in and sort of just touch up your darkened areas, and it'll create almost like rocks highlight the snowy areas again. Like this one on the left, there's almost too many random dots. I'm adding a little bit of gouache around the tree and on the branches just so it looks like there's a little bit sitting there. But that tree on the left, it almost looks a little too dotty. It's not really defining the branches in looking at it. So we'll just take and add some darkened areas. A lot of things can be fixed. You think you've ruined something and actually you really haven't. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more of a dark evergreeny color. And I'm just going to dab in underneath where I did that white. And just sort of redefine where the branches are. I think that does the trick. Same thing over here. Just so the branches look like they're almost on the same plane. Fixes anything you might have overdone. That tree on the left probably could have been a little better, but as Bob Ross says, if you paint a tree and it doesn't look right, there's probably a tree out there that you can find that looks like that tree. Okay, so we'll just pop in a couple of birds up here in this glowing area here. Might have noticed I changed the camera angle a little bit. All right, let's take a look at how this will look with a mat or mount on it. I've got the black mount here going. And all in all, I think this one turned out pretty well. Let's go in for a close-up. I'm pretty satisfied with it. I hope everyone enjoyed watching this video and enjoyed a winter scene with me. And if you liked what you're seeing, comment, subscribe. As you can see, some of the details that we managed to get out. Nice glowing in the sky. And that's it. Thanks again for joining me, everybody. I really do appreciate it.